Greetings and welcome to No BS Baking. JP here, and today I want to introduce a project that I've been working on for the last few months. Now, based on the questions I get asked, I realized I need to simplify all the information that I've presented and put it into a format where it can quickly and easily be referenced when you plan to bake. 90% of the issues I hear or questions I get asked revolve around recipes not working or not delivering desired results. For many, this can be very frustrating. Now, beyond the obvious listed here, the main challenge you have is this recipe tells you nothing. And by arbitrarily following it without really understanding it can set you up for disappointment. So remember, unlike cooking where a little this and a little that can work, baking is a science based on precision, specific ingredient requirements, and balance. So with my experience in product and process standards development and overall QA/QC, I thought, why not use this knowledge to develop a comprehensive home baking tool that brings the benefits of technical baking into the kitchen in an easy to use and understand format. My last video outlined a few calculators and recipe evaluation and control forms, but after reviewing everything, it just wasn't enough. So I expanded everything to create the first of its kind integrated home baking assistant. Now, the first section we'll look at is the baking guidelines. I've made this quickly accessible from a clickable table of contents, and the information here is not just copied from an online resource. The data and guidelines have been carefully analyzed by myself and cross-referenced with multiple technical sources. Now, I've tried to cut through the clutter to provide the most accurate information with the least amount of confusion. Next up, ingredient ranges. Now, along with base ingredients, here we get into many of the ingredients and enrichment additives that you commonly come across in recipes. The guide has carefully included minimum and maximum ranges that you would see used in a broad spectrum of baked goods. Well, the question becomes, how much can or should I use? Now, as I've talked about in many of my videos, having a nice, safe start point that will work with generally most bread flours around the world is key to a successful bake. Each section of ingredients includes valuable information, considerations, and usage recommendations to optimize baking success. But also, it provides a solid foundation or knowledge base for you to fine-tune your product just the way you like. And lastly, I've included a processing guide that explains and provides some of the most critical success factors you need to know about process planning, techniques, and of course, times and temperatures. No longer do you need to go rifling through websites digging for information that seemingly varies everywhere you look. I've taken the time to research and qualify the guidelines contained herein, so you don't have to. So what we have now is a quick kitchen reference for baking ingredients and processes. So let's add some other helpful tools to the package to assist you in quickly and easily calculating some other common but critical stuff. Now, there are a number of sites that provide some of the basic baking calculators, but I've gone a step further. Yes, you'll find standard calculators like adjusting flour protein with vital wheat gluten, calculating water temperature for your dough for achieving a final proper dough temperature, and a few others. But I find them cumbersome, and some are actually asking for silly information like select your own friction factor, as if most of us know what that is. And then we get to some of the specialty calculators that I built, like how much water are my eggs contributing to my total dough hydration? Or if I use butter or margarine, how much salt is it contributing? And should I or can I adjust it to compensate? If I want to enrich my dough for flavor or nutrition with flour or powders, how much should I add? And how much more water will the dough require? Now, this is all solved with a few pieces of information, and it all auto-calculates for you. Whether it's soaking grains or dehydrated fruit to maintain a hydration balance of your dough, or running a quick calculation on yeast level adjustment to deliver the ideal proof time based on your type of yeast and environmental conditions, these calculators are amazing. And with all the cheaping I do about dough weight to pan capacity, my first edition of calculators would not be complete without this baby. Now quickly and easily calculate bread pans, cake pans, or round pans, starting with metric or US measures, and then select your desired capacity plan or use the handy reference I have added. So we have a quick reference for ingredient ranges and process guidelines, some of the common calculators and a number of custom developed calculators that you won't find anywhere. And now we tie all this together with a professional recipe template designed for evaluation, modification, and do-it-yourself recipe creation. Now before I get started here, if you're serious about baking and want to minimize the chances of failure, then invest in a cheap kitchen scale. Do not measure by cups or teaspoons and all that. If you're just not interested in converting to grams and guerrilla-style baking using volumetric measures as how you roll, then I'm sure Grandma's old faithful recipe adding a bit of this and a bit of that will put a loaf of bread on your table. However, if you really want to learn to bake for success, then convert to weights as recommended by most professional baking resources. The first template is simple and is designed to take an existing recipe in volumetric measures and convert it to grams. If it's in grams already, bonus, just plunk in the numbers. This only takes a few minutes using Google or some other conversion tool. So why do this? Simple, so you can see the percentages of each ingredient in the recipe. Now, understanding recipes is not about how much of each ingredient is used, it's about the percentage of ingredients used based on flour. So if you want to improve your baking success and finish quality, start thinking and working with percentages. They are the secret to bakery recipes. Now, as I look at this recipe, there are already some glaring things that may make me reconsider making this. Now, as it sits, I would consider this recipe really sweet, unbalanced, and skeptical of success. Now, if I did not convert this to percentages, I may not even have realized what I was walking into. So by referring to the guidelines section, I quickly referenced start point recommendations and made adjustments to the recipe to provide more appropriate percentages. This recipe looks good. The more you learn to look at recipes in Baker's Percent, the more you will note commonalities between recipes with respect to ingredient ranges used and common standards that hold true in a broad range of bread-related items. Further, you will quickly be able to identify irregularities or areas you need to look into a little bit further. Understanding percentages is not a baking tip. It's a rule for ensuring success. Now, this is exact way I've been building recipes or modifying existing ones for many years. It's not just a way to do it, it's the way to do it. Everything as a percent. I'm going to make a 60% whole wheat bread, nutritionally enriched with soy flour and a few eggs that taste good, provides nice eating quality over a number of days. By referencing the ingredients start point guide, I will lay out the percentages for the first trial. As the recommended start point listed in the guide states, I will start with a base hydration of 63%. And because eggs are so commonly added to bread, I built part of the egg calculator dealing with hydration directly into this form. So our recipe calls for 2 medium eggs. Let's add them. Now you can see that with only 2 medium eggs, the hydration is 70%. Now this is way over my target hydration, so let's adjust it. These 2 eggs added about 7% additional hydration, so we need to deduct this extra water from our base hydration. So we'll subtract 7% from our water and voila, absolutely perfect. So it's just common sense that if you add any dry ingredients for nutritional boost or enrichment or flavor, you're going to need to add more water to balance the total dough hydration. So let's let this calculator sort this out for us. So we're going to start by going and inputting our desired base hydration, which we know is 63% for our recipe control dough, and we know that there's 1,000 grams of flour in it. Then we come down and add in our soy flour at 3% in the factor by percent section. And now we can see that we need to add 19 grams of water, which translates into about 2%. So now we come back to our recipe and we add the 2% hydration that we will need for the soy flour to keep our recipe balanced. And at around 65%, with 60% whole wheat flour and a bit of soy flour, this dough looks balanced and safe for our first attempt. Now just keep in mind that we're building a control recipe based on 1,000 grams of flour for ease and simplicity. Now we simply tell the form what we want to make. In this example, I want to make two 20-ounce loaves or 560 grams finished weights. So my dough weight will be about 680 grams. I got 2 pans, so I want 2 loaves. So throughout my career and to this day, I use this exact tool every time I bake. Now as a baking tech, I need to sit down and do all the math and research as part of my job. For you, it's been converted into tools and technical reference that to this day are used by baking and tech professionals around the world. Now I don't think anyone needs to think too long or hard to realize that everything included here makes sense from a technical perspective. And I'm sure those folks watching this with technical backgrounds in related or even non-related industries will agree. Now if you look anywhere online, you can see many folks struggling, often due to poor or poorly explained recipes or proper processing techniques. Or even worse, the blithering of some home baker know-it-all that's pumping you with BS information. Now this can be very frustrating for those who truly want to bake. Oh, but it gets worse. Now to use as an example in one of my videos, I went out looking for a basic croissant dough recipe. I found this one on the top of the first page of the search results from a very popular baking site with lots of viewers. I thought this is going to work out great as an example for evaluating percentages. My God, was I shocked when I ran the numbers. Now, because volumetric measures really don't tell you anything, I really didn't pay too much attention until I converted it all. So I thought, holy smokes, this has got to be a mistake. So let's open their metric converted recipe and see if it's different. No, just the same disaster with the added bonus of different weight conclusions after conversion. So what's wrong with this recipe? Absolutely everything. Now here's what a common croissant dough should look like. Even the roll in butter on this recipe is a disaster. Now as I mentioned, finding this disaster of a recipe was a complete fluke. If I never looked at the recipe analytically in percent, I may never even have thought about it until it was too late. The point is that, although this example is the worst I've seen, there are many issues with online recipes that are more subtle, yet can cause you a large amount of grief, not just at the recipe side, but the processing side as well. Those of you who followed my channel know that I don't flog any merch or sell recipe books with the same old recipe recycled as something new. There are thousands of recipes online, and the trick is getting them to work for you. Some do, some don't, for reasons I explained many times in my video. I spend many hours creating the Baking Assistant as a very real and significant way to help home bakers bake better. And I thought it only fair to charge a small fee for the large amount of benefit folks will quickly realize, while also providing some support for the channel upgrades I would like to do. For less than the price of parroted, redundant baking recipe books put out by YouTube bakers, and even less than a few Mickey D burger meals, $19.95 will be the best investment you can make for home baking like a professional. And for those folks that do support the channel, they'll receive upcoming expansion packs and online tech support for no charge. So how do you want to bake today? Now, as I mentioned, I'm not trying to sell you shower caps for your pans or branded aprons, scrapers, and other junk. I'm offering a real-world set of baking tools that every home baker can use to improve their skills, knowledge, and success. Now, I'm just getting my storefront finalized, so please bear with me for a few more days until the video shown here is released. It explains everything. And listen, I look forward to your comments or questions, so please take a moment and tell me what you think. This thing is like nothing available out there, and I'm very excited to be offering it to you. You will love it.